Hello and welcome to the podcast, Your Future in Sales and Marketing with me, Mike Dickson, Director of AXR, Recruitment and Search. Now, our purpose at AXR is to help you make great career decisions by giving you access to the insights and expertise of our network of amazing senior leaders. In today's podcast, we're talking with Kate Bean, Head of Category, Revenue and Commercial Planning for Kellogg. Kate is one of Australia's absolute leaders in the category world, a space we've talked about in many episodes thus far, but never fully jumped in. So now, given we do so much work in category and revenue at AXR, this episode is long overdue. Kate, welcome to the pod. How are you?
Very well, thank you, Mike. Really good. How are you?
I'm good as well, thanks. Slight cold, slight cough, so hopefully we can get through this without actually doing anything of either of those. But so we'll get into our usual icebreaker, Kate, the collection of brands from the good and the great in FMCG. What's your favourite brand? And it doesn't have to be FMCG, by the way, just that you're good and great in FMCG.
Yeah, well, I do have two because I did prepare. My overarching favourite brand is a little bit generic, but it would be Apple. And there's two lenses to my question, or to the answer to that question. Firstly, products. I find them very amazing. You know, they are very transformative in their innovation. And, you know, to think 10 years ago, you'd be able to buy stuff using a watch. Crazy. I know now I no longer have to carry a big purse. I can just use my watch or my phone to pay for stuff. And I love the fact that, yes, they're aspirational products, but they are also quite accessible. You might have to save up for a few weeks / months to buy them, but they are pretty accessible. And then secondly, I think what they've done from a retail environment has also been really smart. So I think when they came into retail as Apple stores, the way it's laid out, the immersive experience that people have shopping in their stores, I think at the time definitely set the tone for the future of retail. And obviously their customer service, they're known to be exceptional in that space. But then if I think about FMCG, a brand that I absolutely love, and this is a complete change of tact, is, and I'm probably going to get this wrong, is Batiste dry shampoo.
I don't know that brand, Kate.
Yes, but it's a brand that Church and Dwight, and I probably completely stuffed up how you pronounce that. So apologies if I have done. But from a kind of a busy mum of two, getting out the door some mornings, I used to be a daily hair washer for those people that are, and it's just absolutely saved my life. So quick spray, yeah. Freshens me up and I'm ready to go. So amazing. Again, great innovation. I think a brand that's taken a product that a lot of like professional hair care brands had developed and mainstreamed it and made it accessible for all. And now there's a brown brunette variant that helps cover greys too.
Oh,
so
right.
It's win-win.
Win-win.
Yeah.
Well, Church and Dwight is one of our clients, so I should probably know the brand and give them a call out. So Dave Thomas runs a business there, really, really good organization. Yeah. Cool. Okay, let's get into your background. So a little bit about where you're from, Kate. Where did you grow up?
Yeah, originally I am from the north of England. So I was born in a place called Harrogate in Yorkshire, but I didn't live there for too long, to be honest. Throughout my early childhood, I moved around quite a lot. My dad was in this world, the lovely world of FMCG. So we travelled and moved around with his role quite extensively growing up. I think I went to about, when we did our last count, I think it was 6 or 7 different primary schools. So really kind of moved around a fair bit. So Sydney is actually the longest place I've ever lived anywhere now. Even though, I'm from the UK.
Wow. 6 or 7 primary schools.
Yeah.
My daughter went to 3, which I thought was excessive.
Yeah.
In Scotland, New Zealand and Australia, but 6 or 7 seems, well, I guess it teaches adaptability and
definitely
resilience. And
100%. I think you can throw me into any social situation. And I might get a slight bit of anxiety to begin with, but I soon settle into it. And I think, adaptability. I would love to be able to do it for my children as well. I think experiencing different people, different places, different cultures is so important.
Yeah.
So,
Cool. Excellent. So you mentioned your dad, I think, was from the world of FMCG.
Yeah.
And unlike a lot of people that we talk to who kind of not fall into FMCG, but they don't necessarily target it. They find themselves starting a career there and loving it. You were quite specific about saying, this is where I want to be. So was that because of your dad, and was Mars, a business you knew well when that's where you started, right?
Yeah. I'm probably going to mention my dad a few times throughout this podcast, because he has definitely helped shape, I think, where I am today and what I decided to do. And I very much use him later on when you come to talk about mentors and things. He is very much my sounding board and will continue to be. I think I always say that my FMCG career started when I was about 5. And my dad, we'd go sewing on a Saturday morning, and then we'd have to pop into the local Tesco and check out what promotions were on and how his products were performing. And he may have had a product that was going to be on the end that week, and he just had to check it was on and everything was set up and the tickets were on display and there was enough stock. And he took it very, very seriously. So, I have fond memories of being in like a Tesco and an Asda when I was younger. And this is way before mobile phones, where you could just take a quick snapshot of a fixture, and Dad would be there with his pad and his pen, writing down, what was happening and what prices were what, and sometimes off to call the store manager because there wasn't enough stock, and we'll be facing up the facings. And so I have really fond memories, and I think getting into the world or understanding retail, that came at quite a young age for me. And I was always quite interested in how big stores like that operated. And I actually saw the back of a Tesco, I think, at the age of like 7, when we literally went through to get some stock one day. So there's that. And then secondly, I think another really key memory I have of growing up, and I was a bit older, I was about 12, was watching my dad negotiate buying a new car. And we were buying a new car for my mum. I'd gone with him. It was a Saturday. He was about to close the deal. And it was such an interesting experience for me. It was the first time I'd really seen my dad click into kind of quite a professional mode. And the first really kind of big negotiation example I had in my life. And there was a lot of pausing. There was a lot of tension. There was a lot of awkward silences. There was a lot of, Dad being prepared to walk away. But I kind of came away from that situation, and Dad got a great deal, as he does with cars. And I was like, oh, wow. Like I think I was like, oh my God, Dad's really cool. And then the second one was like, I knew even then, like, that's such a great life skill to have, and to be able to negotiate like that. I was like, wow, I want to be able to do that when I'm older. That was amazing.
Fantastic. And why Mars?
Oh, sorry. Why Mars? I knew that. I knew of Mars. I knew Mars as a brand. My dad had previously worked for Mars back in the day for Dornay Foods, which was a subsidiary of Mars, and he had worked there. Spoke very fondly of them, and I was really keen to get into a business where I knew I was going to get some really strong training. I'd come out of university, and I know that I needed experience, and I needed that training, and I knew that's what I was going to get going into a business like Mars.
Yeah, great. No, fantastic business to kick off. Okay, and it's interesting to talk about life, because when I interview somebody, the first question my team or I ask is, land your narrative, talk about how you got to this point, and we ask them to talk about not just the work journey, but also how life kind of gets in the way, because the two don't operate independently, they're intertwined. And I look at your early career, you were at Mars 2 years, you then joined PZ Cousins, 3 years later moved to Australia. Now, was that Kate Bean's marvelous career plan, or how did kind of life get in the way of that as well?
Yeah, it's a good question. It wasn't a grand plan. No, definitely not. I think I got to a stage, it's about 25, I think, and I'd done school, into college, into uni, into Mars, really enjoyed my time at Mars, but wanted to get into grocery account management and didn't want to move to Slough, believe it or not. That definitely wasn't on my list of ambitions. And I went to go and work at PZ Cousins as a national account exec for Tesco. And I was really enjoying that role. I'd also just then been promoted into a NAM role on their hair care business. And I think from a career perspective, it felt I was really successful. At the age of 25, it was a junior NAM role, but being a NAM, I was like, oh, I'm doing well here and my trajectory's looking good. But I I wouldn't say I was burnt out as such, but I just knew that there was more to life than just the grind of work. And I just felt like I'd never had a bit of time out. And I had a close girlfriend that had moved over here the year before I ended up moving over. And, you know, Facebook was around back then. I'm not too old, but, and she was posting up, you know, these amazing pictures of what Australia and what obviously Sydney was bringing her in her life. And I was like, oh, I've always wanted to go over to Australia. I've always wanted to do New Zealand. So I'm just going to get a working holiday visa and I'm just going to go. I took a sabbatical originally from PZ Cussons for 6 months. I didn't want to completely cut off ties right then and there. And yeah, came over and travelled. So, definitely wasn't part of the plan, but I don't know. I think I just woke up one morning and I was like, right, something needs to change and I just need a new experience and to try something different. I then travelled for 6 months, spent a lot of money. And even back in those days, the exchange rate was like 2 to 1. So it was fabulous. Very different to today. Ran out of money and then landed back in Sydney 6 months later. And I still had 6 months left on my working holiday visa. And at that time, I was like, oh, it'd be great to get some Australian experience. And even if that's just for 6 months, to be able to then go back home and say, yeah, you know, I worked in Australia for 6 months on, you know, this retailer or that retailer, what was originally the plan. And then I ended up working at Warner Brothers and yeah, they sponsored me and it just kind of took on from there.
Well, kind of the rest is history a little bit, isn't it? You know, that's what, 14 years later, you're still in Australia. As you say, you lived in Sydney the longest compared to anywhere else in your life. And how much of that is, you know, career, and much of that is just you're loving life in Australia?
Yeah. Oh, it's definitely the latter, loving life. You know, I met my now husband a year or so later. I've got 2 little boys. And, you know, I think when you're here, it's such an amazing place to live and bring up children. So the pull is very strong. So it's a bit of both. I think it's a great market to work in. It's small enough but big enough to really make an impact. And I think, there's always opportunity that has kept me here. And there's always new opportunities within this market.
And I imagine back then Warner Brothers was probably into, I guess, probably the cutting edge of some of the new technology that was coming out in terms of how we consumed content, and that must have been quite interesting for you as well.
Yeah, super interesting. I mean, I was there when we launched Blu-ray, if anyone even remembers Blu-rays. And it was like massive tech at the time, and everyone was like, oh, we're going to launch Blu-ray, it's going to be around for years, and we're going to charge a premium, which we did. And literally 9 months later, iTunes were like, okay, cool, we're launching this streaming service. And it happened so quickly. And to be part of that and to watch how that changed and how quickly that all turned on to now, 10, 12 years later, you've got the likes of Netflix, which are basically producing their own movies and their own TV shows. And that world has changed significantly, since those days.
And you're still in sales, now selling in Australia. You moved from Warner Brothers to Energizer, which then became your pathway into category.
Yeah.
But describe Energizer, because people will know Energizer now. It's a different business back then. So just talk about, I guess, the business you joined.
Yeah. So Energizer at the time, they had a batteries portfolio. So obviously Energizer batteries. And they also had a personal care portfolio, which the main brands are Banana Boat, sunscreen, Schick razors, Schick shaving products, and wet wipes. So yeah, two quite distinct business units, so to speak. And they were together but separate, if that makes sense. And there were different teams that worked on different sides of the business. But then the further you got up from a structure perspective, they became quite joined. They did eventually end up spinning. So they realised globally that a lot of the profits and what they were making from their battery business, they were ploughing into their personal care business, and that wasn't quite, I suppose, the objective at the beginning of buying some of these personal care brands, and they spun their personal care business unit off to form a business called Edgewell Personal Care.
Yeah. Great, yeah.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because not everyone knows that story.
Yeah.
But you were there during that spin-off.
Yeah, I was. Yeah, I'd been
Which
there
way did you go?
I went the Edgewell personal care way. I think at the time it was the exciting brand new brand, new business. It was all about setting up a team, working through structures, processes, working with some of our data agencies on and negotiating contracts. So there was a lot more that came of it that I probably hadn't done before, and felt that was a kind of a really good step for me in order to be able to say, I really kind of helped drive that function within that business.
Yeah,
but it wasn't an easy decision. It was
as in which way to go.
Yeah.
So you could have gone either way. Was that?
Yeah, I could. Yeah, I was kind of offered both sides. Yeah. And I went with the Edgewell side.
The new shiny thing.
Yeah.
And that's where you kind of started to make you move into category, Kate. Was that deliberate? Was that opportunistic, or you thought it's something I need to do?
Yeah, I've been at Energizer a couple of years, and looking after the West Farmers accounts, so Coles, Kmart and Target at the time, and the category team was going through a bit of change, and they were wanting to bring someone in to kind of build it again a bit more, especially on the personal care side of the business. And I was approached about the opportunity. Was it something that was on my career plan and I was really gunning for? No, I would actually say it wasn't. I was definitely approached about it. And at first I was a bit like, oh, I'm not sure. And then it was about breadth. It was about getting breadth. It was about getting out of my comfort zone. It was about, thinking, what do I want to do in 2-3 stages time or roles time? And will this help me get there? I've always been, as well, even in my account times and my national business account roles, I've always been really intrigued by data. I have always been the person that's like, okay, well, we've got this data point or we've got this factual understanding of something, and we should really be anchoring to that and then making the decision from there. So I've always been, pretty data centric in that thinking. So it did seem like quite a natural fit.
Mm-hmm. And well, obviously worked. And if I was revising at the time, I would say absolutely do it. For all the reasons you kind of got to around breadth and how's it going to help me get to the role in 3 roles time. It was always going to accelerate you. Now, talking about acceleration, you kind of went through category manager, senior category manager to head of category in about 15 months. I think it seems really quick. How did all that kind of happen so fast?
I mean, I would love to say it's because I'm absolutely amazing.
You were so good.
I blew everyone away. There was a bit of an opportunistic time for me. There was a bit of a structural change, and my role effectively got elevated, and I reported through to the general manager for sort of the last 6 to 9 months before the spin. And I think that enabled me to have a larger platform and have a platform where I was able to speak to the executive team and really demonstrate and show them what I was capable of, and gave me the confidence as well to present, to influence, and negotiate in some respects with an executive team. So I think that massively helped. But timing did play a really key point there.
Yeah, good. Well, as it does, no one's career is a perfectly laid out set of decisions and objectives. It's timing, often not opportunity. So where does that head of category go next? Because thinking back to what you said before, Kate, you saw category as potentially a way to create breadth that would take you to bigger roles.
Yeah.
So presumably back then you were thinking, well, what if I can nail experience in category, I can then maybe pick up a senior customer role again or a sales role. Yeah. But you then moved to Diageo in another head of category strategy and development role. Yeah. What was your thinking around why Diageo, why that move?
Yeah. I really enjoyed my time at Edgewell, but I wanted to get back into a bigger business. I wanted to get back into more of a tier 1 structure. And I felt that I had learned what I needed to learn at Edgewell in order to be an even more effective head of category. I needed again more breadth. I needed a bigger role, and I really needed to double down on that. The role at Diageo came up, and I applied for that, and obviously was successful at that. And it was liquor, so it's a different category for me. So again, I will keep referring back to breadth. It was a different category for me, a lot more fragmented channel base. So yes, you do still have Coles and Woolworths, obviously through Endeavour. Well, they've obviously spun as well now, but from an Endeavour and from a Coles Liquor perspective, but there's a lot happening within the independent trade as well within liquor, and then also the on-prem. So again, channel differentiation and channels that I hadn't really worked in before. It was a larger team, and it was just something I was like, great, I'm gonna try and do this. And again, it's back into sort of that tier one space, and really kind of helping to drive my leadership thinking. Katie Steele, I think, mentioned it on her podcast a couple of months ago. And Diageo are really well known for developing leaders. That was also something that really very much drew me to that business.
And your title was head of category development and strategy.
Yeah.
One of the purposes of the pod today is to unpick category a little bit for those who perhaps know a bit about it, but not a lot about it. So talk to me about what's the difference between category development and category strategy.
Yeah. And I think my role at Diageo, and I'll come on to this as well, did very much evolve over time. Effectively, category development for me and how I talk it is very much about the in-year delivery. So it's about getting the basics of category right. So that might be range optimization, distribution, price, promo. You're going into range reviews, you're commercializing the in-year innovation, taking those sales stories. It's all about landing the in-year number through your JBP process. And there's obviously different elements that form part of that. That to me is category development, and it's a day-to-day deliverable and the day-to-day deliverable of the yearly number. Category strategy is very much more that sort of 2 to 5 year pipeline, and actually being able to lift your head up and say, okay, right, whilst this is working for us in year, what are we expecting for the future, and what should we be doing therefore as a result? What do we think our competitors are going to do? And then therefore, what should we be doing as a result? So it's a lot more about consumer insights, shopper insights, consumer trends, getting a really good understanding and distilling where you think growth and how the category is going to evolve over the next 2 to 5 years, working through, numbers and growth rates, working through where there's white space opportunities, who's best positioned for those white space opportunities, and what's the role that you want your business and brands to play as part of that. To really distill and get down to some really clear category growth drivers that effectively should fundamentally be at the heart of everything that the business does from there on out. So that could be, your business strats and your corporate strats. That could be into your portfolio strats, into your brand strats, into your brand plans. That could be your innovation strats into your innovation pipe. And lastly, your channel strat into your sales and account plans. So it really should sit at the heart of all of that, really.
So that's a really nice description of category done really well.
Yeah.
I think. Now, you mentioned before your role obviously evolved during your time there.
Yeah.
So I guess, where were you able to take it? Did you get close to that ideal structure?
Yeah, I think so. As best as I could, definitely. I mean, when I first joined, I joined Diageo. They were looking to bring someone in that had some strong category experience, that had developed a team in the past, set up processes, got really kind of rigorous around what the team was doing, what the team wasn't doing, and making sure that the category function itself was a category function and not just however way you want to look at it, a glorified or unglorified NAM. So the first 18 months was very much about getting the basics right, getting the right team, setting that team up, and making sure we were landing really strong range reviews. Our innovation was landing, and we had a really clear stories. And then I think for me more than it was like I saw this gap of how does this all link together? So how are what we're doing in year and what we're taking to our customers and our retailers, where does that start? And what's the process that our brand teams and our senior leadership team are going through to get to our portfolio strats, which then ultimately leads to our brand strats and our brand plans. And there was definitely a gap. And that gap was, we had a really clear insights team that's still there at Diageo, and it was the category, it was the commercial insights, it was the shopper insights that were kind of I felt missing, but also how do we pull it all together so that when we go externally, our external narrative is really stitched up. And I think that was kind of the gap for me at that time. And then I spent the next sort of 18 months really working really closely with the marketing director, the marketing managers on and the narrative that we were taking externally with our brands, and then how that all added up into our portfolio strat and into our innovation strategy as well.
Excellent. I think we work with a lot of liquor companies at AXR, and I think they're all still on the same journey, which is typically very, very strong brands. But that perspective of linking all back to the category journey for you and the customer through shopper lens is actually an ever kind of going piece of work, I think. But it feels like you were slightly ahead of the curve potentially at Diageo, or you got them to a good place at Diageo. But cool. So your next move was to Kellogg, Kate, and I have sort of part to play in that in terms of placing you. But what really intrigues me is how your role title has evolved. Now you're the head of category, shopper, revenue growth management, and commercial strategy and planning. So a very long business card of those things still exist. But is that title actually a reflection of just where category has evolved over the past 10 years and the scope you now have in a business like Kelloggs?
Yeah, definitely. I think, this is effectively my third head of category role. And each one has evolved over time and has become bigger and bigger and bigger. And that can be obviously the sign of the business because they've been in 3 different businesses. But I do genuinely feel it is also a sign of the function and how much importance that function now has in the overall grand scheme of the structure. So I think I think back to my first head of category role where we were very much more kind of a support function. We were pulled in to help on range reviews, and that kind of was where it stopped. To now my role where very much kind of invested in the strategy and our commercial strategies and our commercial plans, and really being that bridge and that connector between marketing and sales, and holding that healthy tension as all businesses do.
That's a phrase we talk a lot about in the pod, the healthy tension. Interestingly, given we had Paul Bull on the pod recently talking about his new organization, FMCG Analytics, and we into the kind of evolution of revenue growth management in Australia, there's lots to come in that space. Now, you're responsible for RGM at Kellogg's as well as shopper and commercial planning. Does that normally sit in the category team, or is that just the way that you guys see it?
I think it's changing. Like, it's interesting. I look on LinkedIn now and I sometimes see people, they've got the same title as me. And I've seen revenue growth management whilst, as Paul was taking us through a few weeks ago, it is in its infancy. There are some businesses that have dedicated RGM teams, and then there are some businesses that don't really have anyone. Or there's other businesses that have like a net revenue management team, which is for me a little bit of a different lens. Whilst they might still do similar work, it's very much with internal metrics in mind, not external metrics in mind. And they often report through to a finance director. And then there's tension when we're trying to, on sell where we've got to, or whether they've got to internally with then the sales teams and trying to come up with that external narrative. So for me, RGM is very much having that external narrative at the heart and at the beginning, and having that retailer focus in mind. So I would say it's evolving, and I would say it will continue to evolve. When I actually think about category evolving, and we'll probably come on to this soon, but I don't know whether the even the terminology of category will evolve too. And I think there's definitely something in this growth management piece. We're seeing more chief growth officers and that type of thing emerging within structures as well. So I think the role that category plays and what sits within category will evolve significantly over the next 10 years.
Cool. And talking about the evolution of category, but also your career, so do you continue to play a role in terms of taking category to its next phase of development, or at some point do you go back to customer management?
Yeah, it's definitely something I'm toying with at the moment. I think, as I talked about, it's my third stint, my third head of category role. I love category. I genuinely really do. I think it's a perfect balance of still being extremely customer facing. You've really got to understand what your retailer strategies are, what your retailers are trying to do. But then there's that happy medium of then also working with your marketing and your brand teams to really bring your brands and your plans to life. So I really highly enjoy it. I think as well within Australia, we're a small industry to some degree, and we do have fairly flat structures. So when I think about what might be next for me, I would love to be a category strategy director or a strategy director or whatever that title might be, and sit on an executive team and really kind of channel the insights through to strategy, through to execution. But those roles don't exist in many businesses. And I think from where they do exist, they've probably been set up with an individual in mind rather than be, okay, this is exactly what we want to do as part of our structure. So I think there's limitations there as well. So then I'm on the other side of the coin, I suppose. I've got 10 years category experience. I've got 10 years sales experience. Do I then go back in and do like a channel director role to then potentially go into that sales director piece following that? So something I'm still kind of grappling with. It's interesting you ask, because over the next couple of months, someone, one of our channel leads, customer leads, is going away, but over to Europe, as everyone is. Everyone's in bloody Europe at the moment, aren't they?
Yep.
And they're going away for a good 6 to 7 weeks, and I'm kind of put my hand up to be them for that time. So I think it's a long enough time for me to be like, yeah, I actually loved doing that, and I'll get my feet back into the table and work out, yeah, I loved it. Or, oh my God, thank God you're back, and really enjoyed it. But I think I'll stick with categories. So yeah, just working that through at the moment.
Cool. I think take the chance if it comes up. I think it'd be great fun to do it. And either path would work. I think we're way off having still those big strategy roles. I think we might get there eventually, but for now, just my advice, Kate, we'll keep the breads coming.
Yeah.
And now I'm interested too in terms of you as a leader. So if you look specifically as your role, you say you are your third head of category. You've got bigger. Your teams have got bigger over the years. How technical does your role become as a head of now, and compared to actually just being a leader of a function? And could, for example, somebody jump in to run a category function who doesn't actually get category, but they're a great leader?
Yeah. I don't think you can ever say never. And again, I think it would be very business dependent. When I look at my role, and when I do my role well, if I think about functional, I think about strategy, and I think about leadership of a team, it is literally a third. And every day you'll be playing the hat of all three. And I say that because I think when you're in a category role, there's lots of data. And you can cut data any way you want, to be honest, to tell a story. You shouldn't, but you can. And I think as well, there's a lot of noise that comes with that. So you have to be able to jump in and give team direction, because if not, they could just swirl. So I think there's definitely a functional understanding that you need. And I think having been a category development manager in the past has helped me there. And it helps kind of just work through what data you need to hang on to, what else you could let go, and what's really going to meaningfully make a difference. And experience is the only way, to be honest, to be able to get there. So yes, but you're not in the day-to-day deliverables either all the time. You can't be. So you do definitely have to make sure you've got a strong team and a team beneath you that they're able and capable to do that. And you are very much leading. Okay, what's next? What's the future? And I'm always in future thought, and I actually do that in my personal life as well. I think it drives my husband mad. But I am always kind of 2, 3, 4 weeks ahead in what we need to deliver and what might be coming our way.
I think I'd imagine a great conversation with your husband.
Yeah. It's like, for God's sake, hey, it's this weekend. Like, stop thinking about 3 weekends time.
Great. I also want to unpick just where category sits in an organization. Now, you've run 3 different category teams. Yeah. Has the reporting structure been the same each time? And where else have you seen it in a different space in a business?
Yeah, so I've seen it sit on its own. And that was Energizer, did very much sit on its own. And then there are the other businesses that sat within the sales function or commercial function, so to speak. I think the days of it sitting within the marketing team are changing. So I think when I first came into category, I would say it was half and half in sales, half in marketing. I think there's been a big movement over the last 10 or so years more towards the sales side, which to me makes a lot more sense, because effectively it is all about the retailer and your external narrative. So I think that makes sense. But standalone or within sales is probably where I see it more often.
Yeah. What's the benefit of standalone? And are there downsides of that? Because it was a period where that seemed to be where it was going to go, but it hasn't. It's gone there in some places, but not.
Yeah.
But I'm still, in my experience, the majority would sit within sales.
Sales, yeah. I mean, again, I don't know whether it comes back to structure and flat structures and headcount and resource allocation as to where it should sit. I think in an ideal world, it should sit on its own. And I also do believe that as RGM gets rooted into structures and becomes bigger, then, to be honest, having an RGM function report through to a sales director, there is a little bit of a white line there, I would say.
Little conflict?
Little tiny bit. It does play out every now and again. And I think that could also change things in future.
So ever evolving.
Ever evolving, 100%. Yeah.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, category is probably one of the newest functions still in business terms, and as we say, it's always evolving. How much are your roles to kind of bring the business along with that journey? Because I guess the worlds of the other functions are more stable in terms of they're more established for longer, whereas you're leading a function which is actually hard to pin down because it's always changing.
Yeah.
How do you bring the business along?
Oh, how often am I influencing someone? I would say it's like 85% of my day job.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's very much getting people on the same page, sharing insights, sharing different scenarios. If we do A, B, C, what that might mean longer term. And just really spending so much time trying to influence decisions, and that's all the way up to all the way down, and thinking, and also really championing fact data-based decision making, which does happen in a lot of organizations, but a lot of gut feel or opinions can also come into some really big decisions. So it's just really, again, holding the tension on what do we know versus what do we think we know.
Okay. So I think we've covered quite a bit of the category piece, Kate. I wanted just to talk to the broader audience that we have about where does category fit in their career? Yeah. So for example, if someone's listening to this going, I'd love that, and that feels like a space I could learn a lot in, do they jump in for a short period, learn a bit, jump out? Or do you need to stay in for a role or two to really understand the function and therefore, go back to sales or marketing, wherever, with a deeper toolkit? Yeah.
Again, I don't think there's a right or wrong answer with this one. I think it really comes down to what are you trying to get out of that career move. So as an example, if it's something like you want to improve your strategic thinking and even have an opportunity to develop that skill, jumping in and out isn't the way to do that. Coming in, staying in, landing a really good year, landing another good year, thinking what does the next year look like, that's a way of doing that. if you're wanting to, I don't know, jump in to become more data centric or understand how to story tell better or that sort of nature, then yeah, you can probably jump in for a shorter stint to then jump back out. So again, I think there's no one size fits all at all. And I think it's what are you trying to get from that opportunity? What gap do you have and what do you want to help, add to your arsenal so you can go on to progress? Would probably be my answer there. In relation to when and how, again, it would be an individual thing. There are a lot of category analyst roles, and I think that's a great role to enter into to get a really good understanding of what a category team does without the pressure points of having to deliver it solely by yourself 100% of the time. And I say that because in category functions, big category functions in tier one organizations, you have so many multiple stakeholders, and you think that you're coming on a Monday and you're really clear what you're going to do that day. And then by the end of the day, you've done none of it. And you've spent, someone's called, Woolworths have called, and you've got to jump to X, Y, Z. And it's constantly evolving and constantly moving, and it is really fast paced. So a category analyst role will give you really good understanding and depth of what that category team does, as mentioned, without necessarily having all that pressure on you because you are one of the more junior members of the team. So if I was to say, okay, let's start from the beginning, I would definitely recommend a category analyst role, and then probably jumping out to marketing, to sales, wherever you kind of want to. In some cases, finance as well. We do see a few more finance people wanting to come in and take a step into category, and then potentially coming back in at where you're leading a team and you're a category development manager of some description.
Yeah, and I think the way the functions evolve, there are more roles in the function now. So it used to be quite flat, and now we've got analysts, category development managers, category strategy managers. There's revenue, there's shopper. So there's actually quite a few roles you can do, and each one is quite different and unique in terms of the experience you can gather. You don't have to do them all, but actually, again, thinking about the experience you want to gather in each one, you could actually be jumping in and out 3 times in a career comfortably.
100%.
And each experience will be very different to the last.
Yeah. And I think category strategy and category strategy managers are great roles to do that. But you are out of the day-to-day. So you don't necessarily be wanting to sit in one of those for 4 or 5 years, because then it will be hard to jump back in, if that makes sense. So it is like, be really choiceful about what
they are different actually, and I do get calls from people saying, I can't get out this category strategy manager role. I miss the customer, I miss the commercial, I miss the cut and thrust. It's very, very different. So but knowing that, and hopefully this pod's helping to give a little bit of a window into the world of category, which is cool. Now, getting towards the end, Kate, but we're giving out hopefully some good career advice there. But who do you go to, or I might know the answer for this, but who do you go to for your career advice?
Yeah, I mean, definitely my dad from a mentorship perspective, or just somebody that I can bounce stuff off. I mean, he knows me obviously very well, warts and all, so I definitely use him. When I was at Diageo, I was part of a leadership group, and someone gave us a talk, and they talked about making sure that you had your own personal board of directors. And I absolutely love that. And that's really stayed with me. And I think it's really important. And what she meant by that when she was telling us is, think about who you need in your life, the roles that you need them to play, and have a stream of people. So, if you think about board of directors, you've got finance, you've got HR, like have someone that can help you with all facets of your career and of you and your personal life. And I think that's a really nice way of looking at it, because you have different people in your life for different reasons. And even if you look at your friendship groups, you're friends with people for different reasons, right? And they each bring you something different. And again, I think that was just a really good way of making sure that you've got the right people that you can turn to, and you're not just putting all your eggs in one basket, and you are getting some outside, other people coming in with their thoughts as well. And another good one that I would say is also, I've always spent a lot of time networking within Australia, but also globally. So in the bigger businesses and tier one businesses I've worked in, I've always made a really conscious effort to get to know my counterpart in the UK, the US. And again, they're actually a really good person when you can build a strong relationship with them, that you can bounce ideas and things off as well from a career point of view.
Fantastic. I love that phrase, to have your own kind of board of directors
Yeah.
effectively. I've heard it before. I think it's really good because people get a little bit fixated on, oh, I've got a mentor, that mentor will give me everything. They won't.
Yeah.
You've got, and the mentors might not be on the board forever. There might be a period of your life that you need specific advice in, whether it's career or otherwise, and then that passes in. And that that board member moves on. So I think it's a really nice kind of way to look at it in that kind of eclectic way. Now, finally, Kate, finally, trying to sum up, if we're going to have a lot of people listening to this going, wow, what an interesting career. I'd love to kind of either be, Kate Bean in the future or treading that path to some extent. For those coming through, if you were to sum up, what 3 pieces of advice would you give?
Yeah. I think one of my first pieces of advice would be, you define a role, don't let a role define you. And I say that because it goes back to my national account management days, and I would be the person that would be trying to find where are our brand equity scores. And if we were having an update from at the time someone like Millward Brown about how our brands were performing, I'd be like, oh, can I come? And they'd be like, well, you're in sales. I don't know if you really need to be there. And I'm like, no, I really want to go. I really want to hear how our brands are tracking, because that will enable me to have better conversations with my retailers about our brands. And also, even as down as tactically and functionally as when I'm looking at planograms, what brands I should put where. And they're like, oh, okay, yeah, great. So I would say that. I would say, obviously, everyone's role's got things that your KPIs and, your day job, so to speak. But put your hand up, get immersed. If you feel like there's stretch within your role and there's departments and projects or data that can help you do that role better, then go for it. So that would definitely be one. And I think I've tried to, and I still very much do that. I might annoy a few people along the way, but do that. And also as part of that, kind of into that would be just kind of have a bit of a healthy obsession with data. There is so much data available to businesses now. And most big businesses buy obviously Scan, Shopper, Quantium, Synergy. There's so much data available to you, but also the likes of Mintel and Kantar, and they do a great job. And a lot of global businesses do subscribe to those, and it's just not really that widely known. So yeah, a bit of a healthy obsession to data is another one. I think I've talked about this. Secondly, I was very much, again, if you're in an organisation where you have counterparts in other countries, reach out to them. I've got so much inspiration from talking to my counterpart in another country. They can be sometimes quite hard to set up. They're not easy relationships to sometimes build. But, just be consistent and share something. There's always mutual benefit in it. And I remember at Diageo, we had just done a lot of work on our category strategy, and I literally sent the whole deck, which was like months and months of pain and work and blood, sweat and tears, and was my absolute baby. And I just literally sent it over to my UK counterpart and was like, hey, we've just done this. What do you think? Any builds? Have you got any examples? We're now thinking about our in-store vision, if you've got any examples. And it was just like amazing. She was like, oh my God, let's set up a call. We had a call, and like the UK or the European category director was on the call because he had seen it and he wanted to talk to us about it. So something really simple as that kind of really opened up to the point where, as I was leaving Diageo, I had access to all of their files over there. So I was like, this is amazing. I can go and see what their range review was like, for Tesco or whatever. So that's definitely another. And then my fourth one would be breadth. My third one would be breadth. Get breadth. I think breadth doesn't have to mean jumping into lots of different businesses. Breadth can be, different geographies. If you've got an opportunity to work elsewhere, go for it. I would say it can be different channels. Again, I think people get so fixated on working for like Coles and Woolworths, and there's so much to learn in other channels. Different channels, different categories. Again, if you're working for a large organisation where they've got different brands in different categories, ask for moves. And breadth, I would say. Don't stand still.
Fantastic, Kate. Really good advice. We've covered loads as always, and I've just particularly enjoyed looking at it through the category lens, which I can't believe it's taken us this long to get category onto the agenda. So given it's a big part of our world at AXR, but I'm so pleased that you were the first we had on, and we're definitely going to explore that again with future category leaders. But and I'd love to see where the career is going to go. I mean, whether that category strategy happens, or whether you jump back into customer, or a bit of both. I suspect it's probably a bit of both going down the line. But awesome, Kate. And thanks to you all for listening. If Kate's stories inspired you, or you'd like to re-examine your career goals, reach out to me or any of the team at AXR. Our purpose is to help you get the most out of your career, and it's very genuine, guys. So we love the conversations. Next up in the pod, we're back to marketing with a regular in the top 50 CMO list of Australia, Yash Gandhi of Bayada. Now, if you don't know Bayada, think Steggles, Lilydale. In that poultry world, they've also... Yash will talk about how he's launched a plant-based protein business within Bayada as well. So lots to talk about there. Thanks again, Kate.
Thank you.
And from me, Mike Dickson, keep listening to our podcast to help your future in sales and marketing.